oh my God, I cannot breathe. Hello, you're free.
I believe that the tree of knowledge of good and evil is Iboga.
Shamanic practice is to actually go visit yourself at your own death.
Withdraw your permission. Tell it to get the hell out of here.
They use crushed seashells, coca leaves, and saliva.
Then I land back on Earth. Everybody thinks it's just been 3 years, but it's been maybe 3 lifetimes for me.
The Hunting for Healers podcast. Welcome. I'm Frank Vogt. This is episode 14 of the Hunting for Healing podcast. One of the gifts of healing is to be able to listen, right? A patient walks in the room. One of the first things I do is really take in their story. And when someone feels heard, they begin to feel safe. When someone feels safe, they begin to unpack trauma in the body. I know that's how I work, and that's how I unwind my own trauma. I'm interested in listening for stories people have and hold about healing, but also healing stories, optimistic, wonderful stories about how somebody uncovered something in their healing journey, let it go, resolved, got healed, and those stories I want to collect. So if you have healing stories, you know of people who have healing stories, please email me. You can get to me in the show link, and I will listen to your story. Absolutely. That's one of the outreach things I want to do with this podcast, is healing stories, whether they are miracles or just really somebody learning about something that made a fundamental difference in their own health. And that's what we have today. Lauren Berlingeri, who's a former high-end lingerie model and a TV host, now is the owner of a major wellness company, the co-owner and co-CEO of Higher Dose. This mat right now that I'm looking at on my treatment table, crystal mat with electromagnetic therapy, infrared heat, is from Higher Dose, and it's been a wonderful assistant to my practice. But the reason Lauren is coming on today to talk is about something she discovered in her own health journey regarding her breasts. So she had gotten implants years ago, and she'll tell that story of why she felt like she had to get them out. And this is something that many women are talking about, breast implant illness. For Lauren, she felt like it was an awakening to realize this, to have them out. So I'm excited to have Lauren on today to talk about her journey, her healing journey, and to talk about her company, Higher Dose. So let's unpack another one. How are you?
Good. I got the kiddos outside and with their babysitter just in time. So I have the whole house to myself and at least the next hour and a bit to just focus and talk to you today.
Nice. Beautiful. I pulled 2 cards for us. They're animal cards.
I love starting this.
I got the hawk, and the hawk is like a messenger. And I think yours was especially perfect. You had the peacock. And it says here, the beauty of the peacock is unrivaled. It's easy to think that it comes from plumage, but the secret of a peacock is that the beauty resides within and extends outward indefinitely. Also, this adept creature can assimilate or digest all experiences in life, so it doesn't harbor resentment, conflict, or past pain.
Wow. I would have to say that's quite accurate. I actually took a moment to just try to reflect on, the last 15 years of my life, which I don't often do. So it was nice to do that. And just kind of thinking about what I went through and how I kind of internalized a lot of these emotions that I were having, when I was younger and modeling, and just kind of was unsure about myself, but quite insecure and didn't have the right role models, Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I just held it all in. And now that I'm in my 30s and I have my business and my husband and my kids, it's now all the work that I've been doing with healing is trying to get back in touch with those feelings and help process them. And it's just kind of wild. So I really resonate with that peacock card.
Yeah, so it was perfect. So what I thought was cool was that just on a personal level, this interview gives me the opportunity to think about something that I hadn't really broached before with subjects, which is breast implants and how they affect people. And I guess because as a guy, I don't know, I don't just go up and start talking to a woman about her breast. It's awkward. But I think your story And like doing a lot of research since then, it's like, well, no, this is really important. And then there has to be a good way to frame it. So I think this dialogue with you helps me do that for my patients. But more importantly, I think there are so many women out there who want to hear this story. You're certainly not the only one who has a story about breast implants and how you believe it was affecting you. So I thought, yeah, I'd love to hear, what your experience was and what brought you to this point, how you got here.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to share my story. The first place I heard about breast implant illness was online, was on Instagram. And I just started to see all these women that I follow and admire, and they were vulnerably coming out and saying they got their breast implants taken out, which for me was a huge deal because I've never told anyone that I got my breast implants. No one knows that unless you're a super, super close friend. And it literally took me 3 or 4 years to actually even tell my close friends and my family and my mom. She discovered when I was in a swimming pool with her 3 years later, she was like, "Are your boobs fake?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I was exposed." So yeah. I just have to give so much gratitude for those women that come out and tell their vulnerable stories about breast implants and their body image insecurities, because I just think it's such an important theme and women really need to hear it. And it really helped me a lot. And it helped me make the decision to take them out in the first place. So I'm really happy to be here today talking about my story.
Yeah. So what was the impetus to get them out? What were you feeling or what were you experiencing that kind of put an alarm on this for you?
Yeah, I've had them for 8 years. And if I back it up to the day I got them, I had them done and they got botched pretty much, where I would go to flex my muscle and one would go up and the other one would go down. So I was like, okay, this is not good.
Is that uncommon?
Well, not really, because I think it is common. It depends on how you get them done. So I got them underneath the muscle. If you put them underneath the muscle, that often happens because, women that are very athletic, they use those muscles and then they're pushing the implant in the wrong direction. So they just look awful. So I had to get them redone, and I went to another doctor who fixed it and put them above the muscle later on. So that was, the first time I had just such a negative relationship with them from the very beginning. And then after that, I, started to notice weird things, like my eyes started yellowing. My skin has been really bad since. I always thought it was hormones, but when I started to think about it, I tracked it back to the day I got them. Wow. And I also had brain fog for the last 8 years. And I thought it was, blood sugar stuff. And, I still think it is a little blood sugar stuff, but it was heightened for sure. But the real kicker was when I would work out, I would sometimes get my left breast would be inflamed and be rock solid for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So there was a time there that I thought I had breast cancer and kind of went down this spiral of what the heck did I do to my body? But then I went and had an MRI and checked, and, they confirmed I had no cancer. They confirmed that they weren't leaking. So I was like, this must be in my head. But I did go to my doctor and I did talk to him, and he did say, your breast implants were not recalled, because there's a whole list of breast implants that have been recalled pretty much. But you do have textured implants, which does cause, some irritation when you might be working out or being very strenuous. And there's some forms of breast cancer that are developing from it. And I was like, wow, hold on. And 8 years ago, I was modeling. It was very important for me to have breasts. I used to make all my money off of, having larger breasts. But now that I have my own business and I'm in health and wellness, they are totally not aligned with my lifestyle anymore. And I was embarrassed of them. I never wanted to show my boobs. I always had them covered. Yeah. I definitely noticed that my posture was always sort of protecting them. My shoulders were rolled forward because I didn't want the attention from them. Yeah. I actually only got them to continue to make the money that I was making. So then fast forward later, when I'm in the business of health and wellness and I'm supposed to be this nutritionist, influencer in the wellness space. And then I have these plastic things inside of me that are making me sick. I was I really needed to get them out. So, I also wanted to have kids at the same time. So I did go to my doctor, and he did suggest that I have my kids before I get them out, because once you get them out, you end up having to do a lift. It's a pretty big surgery. But then once you have your kids, when you're breastfeeding, the breast get bigger again, and you most likely would have to do them all over again. So
a lot of people used to understand that when they leak, that's when there's a toxic problem. But then I'm reading now that really they're leaking all the time. It's some subtle level, like, and then the body builds these like tissue, like hard tissue around it, which they call scar tissue, but is really much bigger than just scar. It's like, it's this whole inflammatory response to sort of protect the body from it. Right. And then
and there's a foreign object in your body, and your immune system goes, hey, wait a minute, I need to get rid of these. So then it heightens your, immune system, which I think is probably like in stress all the time.
So cortisol is being produced
a lot more too. And, like I'm a big believer in like homeopathic remedies, which is like a tiny little essence of an herb or a plant, and how much that affects my body. So could you imagine the tiny little bit of, plastic or formaldehyde or any of these like silicone and all these other chemicals that are in breast implants, like slowly leaching into your body over the 8 years?
Everything you put in your body, right? So then but it's like the elephant in the room, this other thing that's in your body. So the thing is, like, all the chemicals that are in them, it's like all these, the 38, I think, heavy metals are in them. That's like some serious heavy metal music. And then
it's kind of crazy because women, or at least I can only speak about my own experience, I knew I wanted them because I needed them, because I'll just back it up a bit. I used to have very large breasts while I was modeling. I was a full C, and I decided to get off the birth control pill at the age of 26. Once I got off the birth control pill, my boobs literally deflated to nothing. Like I literally had tube socks.
Which type of model, like, is that more like a lingerie model as opposed to like a fashion or runway model?
Correct. Yeah, I was definitely not a fashion model. I'm 5'8.5". I'm naturally more curvier. I'm too short for a runway model.
Too short. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was kind of more of a commercial lingerie swimwear model. And honestly, I made a ton of money doing that. You make way more money doing lingerie than you do, runway.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so when I, got off the birth control pill and they literally shrunk down to nothing, I was like, I didn't even think about it. It was just like, I need to do this because, I'm not going to make money anymore. And I literally didn't do any research to like what was inside of them or, like looking into any of these details. Cause I just trusted the fact that, millions of women get this done all the time. Like it must be okay, which is like the younger Lauren thinking back, thinking that there's no way they would put something out there that could actually harm you.
Right. It's
well,
like
now that I know what I know, about everything, about, products and materials, and they're just full of so many chemicals that get looked past all the time that, I should have known, which I didn't. So
you think if you had known, it would have made a different choice?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Looking back on it, when I was 27, you couldn't really tell me otherwise. I didn't even ask anyone. I just secretly did it and then tried to hide it.
Yeah.
Because I was embarrassed of it. And again, I kind of like internalized all my feelings and emotions on it. I was not a very vulnerable person. Let's just say that. So I quickly did it and kind of swept it under the rug and hope no one knew about it because I was so embarrassed that I had fake boobs.
Shame that led you to do it, and then more shame once you did it. Is that fair to say?
The shame afterwards was so much bigger than the shame before.
Wow.
I was so insecure. Like I was single at the time. So now everyone that I would be intimate with, there was just this heaviness of like, oh man, they're going to like find out I have fake boobs. Mm-hmm. And I had such a negative relationship. Like I used to say all the time, I hate them. I hate them. I hate them, which putting that out there all the time is just not a good thing. And then also over the years, they get like worse and worse and worse. And then especially after breastfeeding and having them above the muscle, they just looked horrendous. Like my husband would say things about them jokingly because he thinks I can handle that kind of stuff. But really it was like, it affected me so much with my confidence and my sexuality and, just my relationship with my husband that when I actually had them out, I literally felt like I was like a reborn person.
Wow.
And I felt so confident. And now I'm like constantly walking around the house, like totally with no shirt on, which I wouldn't have done before because they would have just been awful and hanging and even though I have like these crazy scars on them, I just feel so much more confident in my body, just knowing that, it's just 100% me, and they just look so much better. And then also I feel so much better. Right. So it's kind of like I got rid of all of those emotions within the surgery and just finally felt free. And I also do think talking about it and just sharing my story and connecting back to those feelings that I once had has really just like helped me in the healing process of it all.
Yeah, totally. So there's a detoxing that occurs, which I'm sure a lot of it is emotional and certainly a lot of it is physical. And it feels like from a Chinese medicine perspective, what I practice is like you're always determining a detox based on the person's constitution. Like there's no one set detox. It's got to be specific. So while there are certain foods that are good for like detoxing metals, spirulina, even like wild blueberries, certain seaweeds, etc., that they're better in cohesion. Like the more products you have, because each one does like a different thing. But they're all very cold. Like they're all very hard on the body in another way. So like I look at some of the side effects or symptoms from the detox itself, and they're like bloating, gas, or difficult. And I think a lot of that is just because people are intaking such really cold detoxification type of herbs or foods. And so I think, yeah, for detoxing, it'll be important maybe for you to use these foods, but also to blend it with other things that'll keep your body balanced. What's great is infrared healing can also be a big part of that, and that's obviously.
I'm on my infrared PEMF mat right now.
Or is it a smaller one?
It actually is a small one. So we just launched the on-the-go mat, which is half the size and much more practical for the people at home that are not using it like in sessions.
Yeah.
Because yours is so heavy. It's 50 pounds and 25 pounds of just crystal therapy altogether. It's like really hard to like lug around.
Yeah.
And this one sits in a chair, so you can like literally like work while you're on it. Or I find it helps me so much just in, like when I'm talking to you and doing podcasts or just like presenting, because it helps keep me grounded in my body.
Wow, that's great.
And it keeps just like so therapeutic. And then also the PEMF technology too is very grounding. So yeah, it feels amazing. But just on that detox side, Higher Dose specializes in detox. So I've had the privilege to be able to research all sorts of different detox methods. And yeah, there's the spirulinas and the algae and the wild blueberries that you could do in your smoothie in the morning. But I also have an infrared sauna in my house. I do lymphatic drainage massage once a week. I do microcurrent too as well. That also has a very detoxifying setting that loosens up stored toxins deep within the body. I'm like a firm believer in just like sweating it out. Infrared saunas are notorious for detoxing of heavy metals, radiation, and environmental pollutants. So you can add on things like chlorella or spirulina, but you can also add on niacin, which is amazing detoxifier that is notoriously paired with the infrared sauna that I've had like a whole protocol doing, and then coffee enemas. So that's kind of like, is coffee enema cold or hot in terms of Chinese?
This entering the body through a different mechanism. So it'd be more thought of as like an external.
Got it. It's kind of like gut stuff that's hot or cold.
Surface things are hot and cold, but you don't think about it as much. It's not as important. So if someone has a skin disorder, you can apply something very cold on the skin that you would never want to ingest, So it does depend. So I'm not quite sure how coffee an enema would be thought of in that way. I think it would just be more thought of how much cleared out, and how often you used it would be more the things I would think about. Because sometimes obviously people use enemas and sweating. If they overdo it, then they become like dehydrated. It's
just not good.
Yeah.
And then one more thing to mention for anyone that is interested in getting their breast implants out, I would definitely do your research. And there's all sorts of like Facebook pages and, like Instagram and websites out there that really educate. And I learned that if you are worried that they are leaking, which regardless of whether or not they're leaking or not, they're definitely like letting go some toxic chemicals, that you want to get that scar tissue out. So I did a full M block, which is where they cut the implant out and the scar tissue all around it. So I don't know if it's a lot of natural breast tissue, but it is whatever was covering that implant to make sure that you get all those chemicals out of the body. That was like a must. And then I also sent it off to what is it called? Pathologically? No, toxicology.
Toxicology.
Sorry. I'm like thinking pathogens and toxins. So to see if there was any sort of like mold or, any like hardcore chemicals in the tissues, which is also necessary because
Right.
if you do find that, then, you might want to go and work with a professional in terms of detoxing because you could detox too quickly. It's definitely like hard on the body. You also detox from the surgery itself, the anesthesia, like there's so much detoxing that happens, but it's pretty wild when you go online and you see these women before and after shots, because where you really see it is in the eyes. So Frank knows because I would always go to him and I'd just be like obsessed with why my eyes were yellow and red. And I couldn't really get to the bottom of it. And I always did every single detox under the sun and try to figure out what was that, like yellowing and the red inflammation in the eyes. And it wasn't until after I had my breast implants that literally it minimized within like, I would say 50 to 60% just overnight, just from getting them out. And when I had the implants in my hand, because they give them back to you too, they used to be a clear material, but mine were yellow.
Wow.
So I don't know why they were yellow, but they were yellow. And so you still have a lot of detoxing to do. It takes like another like year or year plus if you've had them in for a while, but it's just pretty wild what happens to the body immediately just from having them out.
Yeah. Two of the things I thought were really interesting in terms of how it poisons the body is one, it creates a lot of like pseudoestrogens or xenoestrogens, which so the body reads them as estrogen material, and then they block some of the synapses, like they block the reuptake. So the body has like a false sense of how much estrogen is really in the body, and then starts producing more. And, certainly that has effects on fertility and overall health. And then in the brain, like in the central nervous system, some of the metal compounds, they basically work by like creating short circuits of the electrical activity, which is where some of the cognitive issue comes in. So it's like it catches the synapses and reroutes it. And instead of the synapses going to the nerve and the neuron, it like lands on the heavy metal. And it's kind of like, it creates almost like a electrical disturbance by a cell phone or on a TV signal or something.
Well, I mean, we know the power of energy medicine, right? So if, a simple tiny little needle going into a specific area can do so much for the body, what would a huge, silicone, like chemical unit that's next to your heart be doing to the body? So one of the things I also did notice, and I have to tell the story, is literally the day after I had my surgery, I was napping in the middle of the day. And I remember because there was friends that were out in the living room and I could kind of hear what they were saying. So I was like half sleeping, half not. But I remember thinking like, oh man, I got to get out of this heart opener. Like I have to get this block out of the middle of my back because I just had surgery. And it wasn't until I like woke up from the nap did I realize I didn't have a block between my back and I wasn't in a heart opener. Of course, I was just napping, but it was just crazy the amount of like energy that I felt flowing from that area outwards immediately after having my surgery. It was like my body was like, oh, and I just like, honestly, it makes me kind of like choked up just thinking about it. And I just can't believe I went on for 8 years, like with something that was like so blocking my heart chakra, which was always so hard for me to open,
I noticed it immediately when I saw you the first time after. It's like there was something much radiant and open and sort of free, in your body and in your posture and in your energy, which was really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are some of the similarities or dissimilarities between some of the pressures you felt in terms of image and being seen as a model and now in wellness? And because you're very, with your company, you're very in the forefront and very seen maybe in a different way. So I guess I'm thinking about like how the pressures shift or what's similar.
Yeah, I mean, I started modeling at the age of 15. I was on a plane to Milan when I was 16. And I didn't
You grew up in Canada.
I grew up in Canada.
How did they find you? How did they spot you?
Actually, I was at a shopping mall with my dad and my sister, and there was someone there that said that we should do Model Search America. Do you remember that? There was like,
No.
There was commercials on TV all the time about this conference that would happen where you'd bring, I was going to say bring your daughter, but that's what happened to me. You bring yourself to this conference and there were scouts there, and you literally like did a walk for them. They would take a few shots of you or whatever, and then you either made it or you didn't. But if you made it, you would do this like model boot camp, and then they would hook you up with an agency. It was kind of like a money-making scheme. Anyways, we did do that, and we did get accepted, but my dad was kind of like, saw through the bullshit and was like, this doesn't make any sense. So he just drove me to Toronto with my sister to Ford agency, and we did an open call, and they accepted us immediately. So it was actually quite easy. But yeah, my dad got me into modeling, and he always says things that, he has a lot of regrets by putting me into modeling, but also he's just so proud of what I did do with, modeling, because modeling was the very beginning, but it led me to be a TV host, and then to like get into wellness and do wellness startups, and then to start my own company. So, but just to, answer your question, I felt like I was modeling at the age of 16, and I didn't have, the right influences around me to really guide me, to really educate me on what this job was and how you're supposed to take care of yourself, and, how to put yourself out there as a businesswoman, and even thinking about money and like how to handle money. It was like, I was just like thrown in it, and I remember being in Milan, and there was probably like 30 other models living in this one hotel called Via Pola. And it was models from all around the world, from Australia, from Europe, from Russia, from Brazil. And it was really interesting to be around these like young models that really, when you go to Milan, you're potentially going to have a career in it. But some of them really like had to be successful just for their livelihood, and also to send money back home to their family, which was like a whole other type of pressure that I didn't have as a Canadian model. But I definitely got influenced from it. I remember living with this Russian girl, and she was 16, and she was like doing all these like high fashion jobs. And I remember she was so skinny, didn't eat anything. She used to just eat sugar, actually, tiny bits of sugar. And she used to pose for hours in front of a mirror. And she was like full blown anorexia. And I just like remember seeing her and knowing that she was sick, and being like, I'm not going to turn into what she's doing. But ultimately, no matter what I did, being in that environment and being around those models and doing it for how long that I did do it, and knowing that I made more money by the skinnier, I was, it of course was going to affect me. And it did. There was times where I would never say I had anorexia, but I had crazy body image issues. I used to count every single calorie. I would overwork out, and I just didn't really know how to take care of myself back then.
I feel like floaty when you're talking about this time period. Like I almost feel like empty-headed, or that I haven't eaten, or like it feels very. Sometimes when I hear people talk, I can like feel what they're talking about. So that's interesting. So then that was your entry into that world, and who were your role models?
I think I didn't really have any role models at the time. What I did have was a really awesome family that always kept me grounded, because I would always go back home, back to Canada. And I have 3 brothers and sisters that like always tell it to me how it is. Like, you're too skinny. What are you doing? Da, 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 da. That kind of would snap me back into reality. But it was just this ongoing battle internally of like, not being pretty enough, and not being skinny enough, and like obsessed over like working out and like counting calories to fit into this mold of being a model, which in a way was somewhat of a blessing, because it launched my interest in wellness and nutrition, because I was just so tired of not knowing what I was doing, and just like doing all these crash diets and taking Adderall and smoking cigarettes, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And once I went into nutrition school, I actually realized that this was my true passion. Modeling was never a passion for me. It was just an experience where I got to travel around the world and meet also all sorts of cool people, and, learn emotional intelligence, because you like are forced to be with new people all the time. And you're also forced to be alone and go to new countries and make new friends. And there was a lot of great things that came out of it. But nutrition was really where I knew that my passion was, because I couldn't get enough of it. I remembered everything. And before I knew it, I was consulting with models and telling them what they needed to be eating, and what the kind of diet and lifestyle they should be doing so that could work. And I did that for, 2 or 3 years before I even got into startups myself in the wellness space. And I really had a true passion for it because I knew what it felt like, to put that kind of pressure on myself and do these fad things that end up making you not healthier. If anything, made me look worse. When I started to nourish my body, I actually started to see more jobs come in. It affected my personality. It affected my energy levels, affected my mood. It affected everything. So yeah, it was really like a true passion of mine to work specifically with models to help them.
Wow. And does that continue today? Do a lot of models come for your guidance or your know-how?
Actually, when we first launched Higher Dose, we had a cult following of models. And I don't know if it had anything to do with me or if the infrared sauna just spoke to them the same way that it spoke to me.
Yeah.
Because I was obsessed with my glowing skin and getting good sleep and having good calm energy and, work out without working out and burning calories and all the stuff that the infrared sauna did just totally spoke to me as someone that was trying to look and feel a certain way. So the models just were what really blew up Higher Dose in general, because all the models came in, took selfies of themselves. It was this perfect kind of selfie space because there's all these cool lights happening and you're naked in the sauna. So they would all take photos of themselves and it just spread like wildfire and everyone knew about Higher Dose and it became this cool underground spa that you had to be in the know to really find it, and it blew up overnight. We went from, one location to 4 years later having 12 locations in New York City, which is pretty wild.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So just to close that chapter out, so the way that, do you feel like it's evolved very much in terms of how you see yourself and in terms of being public or being more out there? What has shifted that gave you the confidence to know, I don't need these breasts, I don't need this or that?
Yeah, I think it was, having other women in my life that I really looked up to that told their story and really inspired me. And I just thought that was super powerful. And I want to be that for other women too. I don't want to sit here and pretend that I just do the infrared sauna and I look and feel a certain way.
Right.
I actually do quite a lot to feel and look a certain way. And, having the breast implants were taking away from me feeling a certain way. And I couldn't hide that anymore. And I felt like a big part of getting them out was also inspiring other women to do the same, because it made such a difference in my life. And I just know there's so many women out there that just don't know how much they're affecting you, because it's in such small ways that you would never be able to link it to the breast implants, because it happens over time. It's not like you get the breast implants and then it happens overnight. It happens over years. Right. And you just never know about it because they hide all of this information from you.
There are all these studies they do, and some women were saying, there's follow-up studies. So it's not even so much of a clean-cut study. It's they monitor people over many years. But if you get implants out, they cross you off the study. All of a sudden you're out, which is the stupidest thing in the world, because those are probably the people who are most affected that decided they had to get it out.
Yeah, I think that there's still a huge business in women getting breast implants.
Yeah, $350,000 a year, I think I read.
Still, is it not declining at all? Or?
I'm sure it is, but as of a couple of years ago, it was still $350 a year. But then there's 80 or so who get them out.
Yeah, even my doctor, who's amazing, he was the one that fixed my breasts in the first place when they were, going one way and the other way. He still doesn't fully believe in breast implant illness. And I didn't choose to go to a doctor that specializes in breast implant illness because I really just loved him as a surgeon. And I was also concerned on the way that they were going to look afterwards. And I just love him. And I think that he has great practices, but he doesn't admit to breast implant illness. He even says even if they're leaking, if they're ruptured, that breast implants have this gel form where they don't actually leak out oil like they did back in the day, because they used to be an oily texture. Right. Whereas now they're more of a solid texture. So he thinks because they're all just staying in one spot, then it's actually not poisoning the body. But I also get where he's coming from, because it's if he's going to admit to breast implant illness, then how is he going to be putting breast implants in for women, which is a big thing that he does?
Right.
So I think it's like a mental block for like a lot of doctors anyways, because they don't want to believe it. And if they do believe it, then I think they have to specialize in that and only that.
Right. Yeah. You have to justify your whole livelihood with it. So.
Exactly.
Yes.
But yeah, I really do think that the more women that come out and just talk about their own experience with it is the best thing that could happen. Because if I can prevent like one young girl from doing something that, you know, is ultimately going to cause many more problems than she already has, or if not, at least she knows it. And then, you know, if she decides to get them anyways, like, you know, she has that knowledge there and she can just monitor them. I also know like a lot of women that are older and they, you know, breastfed and their boobs are in really bad shape. And I get why they would want to put breast implants in, but I just think that there's other things to consider. There's like lifts that you can do. And then there's fat transfers, which I did not do, but you can do that. So there are other things out there that are better for the body.
Yeah, I know some patients who had just had transfers in their body, which I'm sure is different. What would you say to someone who would say that, well, it's easy for you to say now because you're not doing the modeling? Like how, you know what I mean? If someone were to say, well, I need to do it to be successful, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say like, then, you know, if you want to still do that, that's totally fine. I would just be aware of the information that's out there and know what's in them and try to do like the healthiest thing for you. And I would definitely monitor them and pay attention to the way that you feel post, to the way you feel afterwards. And, you know, I guess you kind of like weigh it out. Like maybe my symptoms weren't enough for most people to consider.
Right. Yeah. And we don't want to have people shamed or feel like people have to be paranoid if they have them and that they all of a sudden, oh, you must have the illness. It's coming. You know, it's not like that. That's not what you're saying.
No. And I think a lot of my stuff was mentally affecting me more than the physical, because the physical stuff, even though it sounded quite bad, you know, I still considered myself to be quite a healthy person, but it was more like my shadows that I had from the experience and the reason why I wanted to do it. And the fact that I was like not out and open about it and somewhat hiding it. And, you know, it affected my posture and it always like made me carry on this insecurity of a young model into my older years where I feel like I've progressed out of that phase. So, there, you know, for me, it was like, I would say it was like 50-50 in terms of my symptoms being mental versus physical. So not everyone's going to have them too. And I have some friends that have them and they love them. And, you know, that's fine. But I also like took a moment to just say like, here are the typical like breast implant illness symptoms. Just like watch out for these, because if you do have them, then at some point, you know, you might want to reconsider. And then also realize that every 10 years, you're supposed to get them out anyways.
Oh, really?
Get them changed out, which a lot of women don't do anyways. So, you know, I was coming up on my 9th year of having them. So I would have had to get them swapped out anyways.
So what is the science in the infrared? Like you guys sold, I know, like a billion infrared blankets. It's like, what is it about them that people are really like, that they feel like it's helping them, or what is the science behind what the infrared actually does?
Yeah, so infrared is a light therapy. It heats the core body temperature versus, you know, when you go into traditional saunas, it heats the air. So it's heating your core. It's much like the sun, as the sun is a light therapy and the sun heats the core, but it's without all the harmful UV rays. It's actually a very therapeutic, rejuvenating light spectrum. And what it does is it vibrates water molecules and pulls out heavy metals, radiation, and environmental pollutants out of your fat cells. It also downs cortisol levels and puts your body into parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest. It's very calming and relaxing. It also increases blood flow and circulation. It downs inflammation in the body. It gives you amazing glowing skin. It works on the epidermis of the skin by building collagen. And ultimately what it does is it increases your happy chemicals and uplifts your mood, where you literally feel calm, connected, but somewhat euphoric afterwards. Kind of like that feeling of, you know, going out and doing like a run, you know, when you always feel like amazing afterwards, the high of a run, you get the high of saunas afterwards. So what we did is, you know, we had 11 locations in New York City and we strictly just did infrared saunas in these locations. But what we did with the sauna blanket is that we wanted to bring the infrared sauna to the masses. But the sauna is quite large, clunky, 700 pounds. It's not easy to buy. It's quite expensive. So we just wanted to create a unit that was more portable and easy for people to afford while still getting the same benefits that you get in the sauna. So we created the infrared sauna blanket, and you pretty much wrap yourself in this blanket and you get warmed up by all of the amazing infrared benefits, and you start sweating like you've never sweat before. It's also increasing your heart rate to the pace of a light jog. So you're getting a passive workout and burning calories while you're in there. And you just sit in there for 30 to 45 minutes. You let yourself sweat and detox and let go of whatever's not serving you. You know, in that moment, you can kind of feel like maybe like your heart's racing a bit. So you don't feel like so calm, let's just say. But as soon as you get out of that sauna blanket, you felt like you just like melted away any stress or pain in the body. And you just feel so like calm and like grounded. It's amazing. And your skin's all juicy and glowy and you like feel like $1,000,000. And the reason why like I'm so obsessed with it is because there's nothing out there that has really made me feel as amazing as the infrared sauna or sauna blanket does just within one session. Usually it's like you have to go a bunch of times in order to feel something. With this, it's immediate. And infrared has been around forever. It was actually created by NASA. It's been around for 30 plus years. The technology is so gentle, so safe. You know, when babies are prematurely born, they're in incubators. That's infrared therapy. Mine were actually 5 weeks early, so they were both in infrared incubators getting dosed.
I was born early. I think I was just in a light box, like regular light bulbs.
Yeah, it's so regenerative and so healing.
Why did NASA create infrared? Do you know?
I actually don't know. It maybe was discovered by accident, but I actually don't know why they created it. But I don't think it was in a sauna form initially because infrared is actually used in so many different modalities from like they can find early signs of breast cancer by like infrared scanning. There's infrared and lasers that you get like when you break a bone or you want to get skin therapies. There's infrared technology and goggles and cameras and, it's used in so many different ways because it's ultimately a light, like a light spectrum. And I was going to say, in our case, it's a light therapy. So it's used in many different ways. So I actually don't know why exactly NASA created it.
So as a woman and as an entrepreneur, along with your partner, business partner, Katie, like what are some of the challenges that come across that you feel like you're navigating based on the way the world is and certainly during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we had 11 locations when the pandemic hit, and now we currently have 1 location. So that side of the business definitely took a big hit. But luckily for us, we launched our sauna blanket about 1.5 to 2 years before the pandemic hit. And we saw that side of the business growing at 400% versus our spa location, which was growing at about 25%. So before the pandemic even hit, we knew this was going to be something that we would want to focus more on, which is more of the product side and less location. So for us, in a way, it was somewhat of a blessing, even though it was somewhat of a heartache to see all your locations go overnight. But it did allow us to focus time and resources into, getting infrared to the masses, which is through the sauna blanket. So in a way, a challenge was turned into, something that was a blessing for us because we would have never done that, in the past, like to close the locations just because we know it's not growing at the same pace as this sauna blanket that we just launched 1.5 years ago. You just wouldn't do that, right? Mainly because we felt so passionate about these locations and we built such a cool community and we had so many amazing clients that loved it. You couldn't do that. But in a way, it allowed us to accelerate the business because we were getting, pretty much killed on, the time and energy and the staffing that went into these locations versus putting all those resources into direct to consumer and bringing, the sauna blanket to the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, well, and what a perfect time for that. It's a way, something people can do. So with all this new energy you have and hopefully this continues your detoxing and such, what's next for you? What are you excited about?
I'm excited about creating content, actually. So there was a middle chunk of my career that I kind of left out, which was I always call it a television host because I don't really know what else to call it, but it was a TV host. And I actually had my own show called Women versus Workout, which was a really cool show where I got to try all sorts of, physically challenging things from NASCAR driving to motocross to Navy SEALs and, extreme wakeboarding and really cool stuff. It was actually the concept of like, watch this model try to tackle these crazy, insane things. And that show did so well just by people sharing it. It was a YouTube show and I never had one piece of press or no one ever talked about it. And, we didn't even know what it really was back in the day, but it went viral because people just like loved it. They loved the energy of like seeing me be so excited about trying something that was insane. And it led me to do all sorts of different things, from like hosting for EA Sports, UFC, IMG. And I just love, being in front of the camera and hosting and creating content. And I always kind of wanted to produce content too as well. So Katie and I are going to do some sort of next level biohacking show where her and I try all these, different like biohacks and see what technologies are out there and what makes sense. But the real spin is actually having women test it, because, most of the testing is done on men, which most people don't know, which is actually kind of like heartbreaking, because, you think that something's really good for you because you read all the research in it, but they didn't test it on women. They tested it mainly on men.
So give me an example. What's something they test just on men that you're curious about?
So like, for example, I did a ketogenic diet for, I would say 2.5 months, really. And it was like a heavy meat, heavy like fat diet that for me as a woman, I couldn't process, because one, I don't detox of estrogens that well. I was probably producing all these extra estrogens because of the breast implants, but it was a toxic overload on my liver, and I couldn't go to the bathroom. And women in general have a hard time going to the bathroom and letting the hormones out of the body, let alone when you're eating such a heavy fat diet. And then you can't process the hormones anyways, because the liver and hormones work together. So men thrive on this diet. It's amazing for the brain. They feel so good. And then yet women, like, I started to experience all these different like skin issues, and like they were suggesting me put butter in my coffee and doing all these things that just like put my hormones through the roof. I had like a cystic acne overnight. I was super lean and like fit looking, and I had all these veins coming out, like very masculine, but it was awful for my hormones, and like good luck trying to get pregnant like that. And I was like so aggressive, I couldn't get my words out quick enough because it wasn't.
The fats are like keeping everything in, right? Like they're storing everything. So which is probably doubly bad for you with the implants, because then like none of the toxins are leaving the body.
Exactly. I just think that women have, I know they have a very different endocrine system, our hormones. Things that work better for us are things that balance us, that make us feel calm, that help us sleep at night. And those kind of like real aggressive things that like spike cortisol are not good for us, not good for women. So that's like a perfect example of how it could help a man thrive versus quite do the opposite for women, especially when fertility and, us being these like calm, nurturing, sometimes mothers need to be. And instead I was like, like just
you're on edge. Yeah.
Cortisol.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Even with medications, I would say that's probably true, right? Like they're going to affect men and women so differently, or vaccines or whatever. And I think it's true, not only of men and women, but also just different body types, different constitutions. It's like medicine for the masses is really going to have a lot of patches and holes in it, because it's not direct for what a specific person needs, which means you can't mass produce everything. Like some things have to be one-on-one, individualized. I guess that's that's why I work the way I work, because you need to fine tune things for what that person needs. So then you recognize that this felt shitty in your body, literally, and then you're just like, you went off that and you immediately felt better.
Immediately. Yeah. And then you have to like, probably for the next 4 or 5 months, try to work backwards to like, get the results that you were actually trying to get in the first place. So yeah, it like took me a while to like really realize that, it was in my 30s that I realized like, hey, maybe working out twice a day and, giving it so much and never taking a day off is like not good for me and not helping me get to the goals that I'm trying to get to. And why is that? Because like this no days off, like go hardcore training was actually like geared towards men, because they studied this on men. And it's like, what's actually supposed to be good for women? So I think that's kind of our angle on it. And we're just like really excited to deep dive into the research and use ourselves as guinea pigs to try out this technology and and really see, what works and what doesn't based on the way that we feel afterwards. And
when you decided to get the implants, was there a component of that as well? Like, obviously part of it's just like you want to succeed and you want to have every edge, but is there also like a male-female dynamic, like within modeling or within the industry, that felt like you had to meet some sort of standard?
Yeah. And it also was a big part of it was like, so I remember my aunt when I was younger, she used to joke about her breasts looking like tube socks when she bent over. My aunt was like in her 50s at the time, and it stuck in my head. And back then when I was thinking about like needing to get my breast implants done, I was also single and thinking, how am I going to find someone that's attracted to me when I have tube socks as breasts? And I used to have these amazing boobs that really like were my identity at the time, right? And drove a lot of my sexual confidence. So yeah, for me, I felt like a Band-Aid to help like in both areas there, to help me with modeling, but also this insecurity that I had that I wasn't enough without boobs, because that was a big part of my power, was being this sexy woman.
And did you feel empowered by it in some way? Like, was it a mixed bag in that sense, or did it immediately feel off?
I did when I had my clothes on, which was this weird thing when I did first starting dating. And I think I mentioned this before. It was like I had all this like confidence when it came to attracting someone in. But then when it came time for them to actually like touch me, it was like I was like dreading it. It's like that first time they're going to realize that I'm fake.
Right.
And that these aren't mine. And I just wanted to explain, I used to have them, but then I lost them. So this is kind of okay for what I did, because it's really not who I am. And I just had so much feeling towards it that was like so toxic, because it was just this internal dialogue that just ran in my head. And I think it stopped me a lot from just like being this like, more confident woman in my body because of them, which it was supposed to solve for too. Right. So it was kind of like, this double-edged sword.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of how you present yourself, does it make you rethink yourself in general, or does that just feel like you're done with it now? Like you are who you are?
I have never been so confident. I can wear all these clothes that I never used to be able to wear before, because I used to have like a bra to like hold them back, because they just got so bad and so heavy. Whereas like now I honestly feel like my posture's been fixed overnight. I feel so much more confident, and I'm a sporty girl. So they fit me in terms of like my physical life too as well. Like I jump on a trampoline, I don't even think about it. Like I do a workout and I don't even think about them bouncing all the time. And I can wear clothes now and it looks so much better on me than they did before. And I'm like wearing all these like shirts that I like used to just look at other women wear and think they just look so good in it. And I don't know if it's just changed on like what physically is nice now versus what was, 10 years ago. Maybe bigger breasts 10 years ago were actually more in fashion than they are now. But it's just like, I feel so confident about it. And I thought I would be more embarrassed, like, especially the first time I post on Instagram, like people are going to all of a sudden notice I don't have boobs, because I'm not like going on Instagram and like tracking my story, because I'm just not, I don't have time to be on Instagram and tracking my story like that. And I'd rather do this. I'd rather like have a conversation and hopefully my story gets out that way. But yeah, it was like that first time you're going to like post a photo. Am I going to be embarrassed? But it was like quite the opposite. I was like sports bras fit. Like I look amazing. I like my confidence is there. My skin's so much better immediately. So it's been quite the opposite.
That's great. That's really great. Well, I mean, I'd imagine that content will be a natural fit for you. You're obviously very expressive and very comfortable. So that's fun. That's great. Anything else from Higher Dose that you feel like is coming along that in terms of wellness or helping people?
Yeah, we're actually launching all sorts of other cool products. This mat that we were talking about earlier that I'm on now and I gave to Frank is our infrared PEMF mat. And we mix the amazing power of infrared with PEMF technology, which is pulse electromagnetic frequency. It's a frequency that's very similar to the Earth's core frequency. It's very grounding and relaxing and energizing. And It's a perfect match made in heaven with infrared. And instead of you wrapping yourself like a burrito and sweating like crazy, it's more therapeutic. You sit on it. You can sit on it all day long. You can, do sessions and have clients on it. It's just like helps you like drop into your body and feel like calm and connected immediately.
I love it because so I start a lot of my healing sessions with craniosacral therapy when I'm listening, and I listen to the acupuncture points, but it's great when I have the infrared mat on for them because it's like, I feel like it's slowly helping unwind. It's like you're slowly cooking the patient, not cooking like overheat them, hopefully, or over sweat them, but just like really warm up the tissues and allow the connective tissue and the fascia to soften and open. So I feel like I have help. Like I don't have to like figure it all out myself. The table is like my supporter, my assistant in a way. So it's cool like that. I think it's really
especially cool. You and your clients coming from like New York City where it's like go, stressful, hectic. And like totally. I'm your client, so I know what that feels like. I usually come in, I'm like, blah, 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 and I pile all this crap on you. And then I like lay on this table and I'm like, I can feel my body so tense. And then you start to do the cranial and I just like, my legs just like drop out to the side. And I'm just like, ugh, like you kind of become this like mush. And, the infrared is like, it's similar to the sun. So you feel that same feeling as when you like first go outside and you let that sun hit you and it warms up your tissues and you just like, I just relax.
Yeah.
So it's such a beautiful therapy. And I definitely suggest everyone should have access to it at home because it's not like a one time, like, okay, I'm good. You want to use it all the time. It's like so good. And then we're launching infrared red light face masks. I also love red light therapy too, in terms of balancing hormones and downing inflammation. It's great for the skin. And then we're launching a whole line of magnesium inspired and trace mineral inspired products that are very complementary to the body in terms of if you sweat a lot, but it's also inspired by the sea, which you know how healing being in the ocean is in the sea with the salt water and those minerals and the negative ions.
Yeah.
So we're creating a whole line of product that was inspired by the sea. So infrared's like the sun, PEMF is like the earth, and then our magnesium line is like the sea. And the idea is that we want to bring the nature indoors in the comfort of your own home.
Oh my God, that's magic. That's so nice. What's the difference between near and far infrared?
Yeah, it's a great question. So far infrared is a longer wavelength that absorbs in the body very differently than the near and mid. Near mid is a much closer wavelength. It's actually much hotter. So you can't always get near mid in things like a sauna blanket or a mat when you're laying directly on it because it's too hot for the body. But the far infrared wavelength is more of the detoxifying, relaxing technology that's used majority in like saunas and therapies. Whereas the near mid is like, because it's quite hotter, you have to be much more careful with it. And they use that more in like lasers and ways to like work on the epidermis of the skin and like, you know, kind of affect the skin on a much deeper level. Both are amazing. You know, in our saunas, we have near, mid, and far infrared technology. The far is around. And then the near mid is these two panels that are right in front of you. They like vibrate this like red color and are very strong. And they have sauna guards on them. If you touch them, you'll burn yourself because the wavelength is much closer. So that's kind of the difference between the two. They're both amazing, but one's much more intense, much more hot. And the other one is further back wavelength that affects the body much differently.
I see. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love your story and your bravery to share and tell it in such an articulate and like humble way, you know, and I think it'll relate to people. So that was really cool.
Thank you. I mean, I love talking to you. So any chance I can just sit down and powwow with you and get my cards read. you're the
Hawk
best.
and peacock. Yeah. I like
I mean, that's like, I am obsessed with animal cards. I have them at my house too. It's like kind of a way to break the ice with people. And whenever we have guests somewhere, we always love pulling animal cards.
Yeah, this one is Kim Kranz, and I'm hopefully going to have her on in a few weeks.
Oh, wow. That will be amazing.
Yeah, she's got a few tarot decks and really interesting. But get the kiddies back in and you have so much on your plate, but like, you know, it's inspiring. And so I'm glad to hear that you're finding new ways all the time to shed stuff and stay present.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. So, Hunting for Healing podcast. Please subscribe, listen to all the episodes. Let me know what you think. And if you have a healing journey you would like to share and you find of interest, please share it with me. Email me on the link and I will listen to you as well. So special thanks for Lauren to come on with me.